Good morning, everyone. I am Ron Ford. We are here, it's 10:30 on March 19th, this Tuesday. We are here to start our Kane County Development Committee. Clerk, please call the roll.
Berman,
Aaron's here.
Doherty,
Doherty here.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, yeah, present.
Kenyon,
Ron Ford.
Linder,
We are here 10:30
Linder on remote.
on March 19th.
Davis, Caius,
Guys present.
Tepe,
Tempe here.
Williams,
Williams here.
Ford.
Board present.
Do an in-person quorum.
All right. We have in attendance by remote, both on Health, Darty and Linder. Are there any objections?
No.
All right, seeing none, you are welcome in. Approval of a minutes from February 20th,
Williams will move
2024.
for unanimous consent.
Any objectives?
No.
It's just without objections.
Without, all right, so without an objection, so been approved.
This was in your mailbox.
Now we, for public comments, I believe everyone here is for public comments, are here for one of the two petitions that we have. Unless, did the other come back?
You should do agenda first and not agenda immediately follow.
Okay. Yes, it will be agenda items first. All right, seeing none, any non-agenda public comments? All right, we're gonna move right along. Monthly finance reports, I believe, are on file. I don't think there's any questions or comments. All right, we're gonna move on to our Building and Zoning Division.
Good morning, Mark Van Kerkhoff, Director.
You snuck in on me. Good
Oh,
morning.
Sorry,
Hey,
I
no,
came in
go
last
right
minute.
ahead, go right ahead.
Building and Zoning, our team is gratefully fully staffed at this point. We had a change in one of our building inspectors, and our new inspector started a couple of weeks ago and is getting training. We're glad to be thankful to be fully staffed as we start to move into the busier season for construction. And in terms of our code enforcement activities, you'll hear that a little bit in the agenda. But happy to answer any questions you have before we move on to the zoning petitions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Caius, just a question about you lost a staff member. Did they do an exit interview to find out, was it salary or?
Sure. So the Human Resources Department has formalized a process for doing exit interviews, and they've been provided with the information on both people who left recently, a building inspector and one of our property code inspectors. But finances usually has something to do with it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Keep that mic on. Now we go into our zoning petitions.
Okay, great. Your first petition this morning is 4626, petitioner 714 Properties. This is not a commercial solar project.
How boring?
Thought you'd appreciate that. Well, this one's anything but boring. This is a just to let you know before I go through the slides, this both originally came to our attention because it was a violation of building and zoning ordinances. We've been working for quite some time, as you'll hear from the petitioner, to describe what their pathway for administrative remedy, both for zoning and for eventually building permits, if the zoning were to be approved for the use. But it's also notable, it is one of the, I think it was really the first petition formally since we amended our zoning ordinance to reflect some of the changes and current things happening in our agricultural community, particularly around agritourism, agricultural related events. So this is coming in as in our F2 district for one of our agricultural intensive event venues. So just to give you that introduction. The 2040 land use plan, it's an area plan for agriculture. You can see the village of Burlington is somewhat around this pocket of unincorporated area. Here it is on the zoning slide. You can see there's a number of F1s for some of the rural residential uses, as well as, again, the Village of Burlington. There's a small residential subdivision just to the south and slightly to the west, and then some other estate zonings further to the south and to the east.
I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance. What's the white section?
Oh, everything in the white is zoned F district farming.
Okay, thank you.
Here's an aerial that gives you an idea of the general land use pattern, both for fields that are being used for agriculture and again, some of the other residential uses and small farmsteads in the area. Here's a close-up of the subject property, as well as you can see the two residential uses in close proximity adjacent, just to the north along Juan Road and just on the other side of the street. And then another residence further to the south with that other agricultural operation. Here's a close-up of the site. You'll see the proposed site plan, but it consists of a single-family residence and a couple of agriculturally constructed buildings that were originally stable, still being used as a stable, and what was a riding arena that's been converted for the proposed event venue. Here's their proposed site plan. They would be rezoning the residence and the north and east part of the portion to the F1 rural residential, and then the area in the yellow golden color would be the F2 for the agricultural themed event venue. You can see the additional parking they're proposing to add in addition to the gravel area that's already there. I failed to mention also, they're also working on a resolution for violations for the stormwater management ordinance as well. Here's the another site plan showing some of the proposed recently planted evergreens, some additional evergreens that they're proposing for the parking, as well as the resolution of the stormwater violations. Here's some photos. This will bring some shivers back to you, even though we're not completely out of March. Showing the approach from the south, the driveway, the existing gate that exists.
Mark, I'm sorry, can you go back one to the map?
All right, go.
One more. So I'm confused. What's the difference between the black circles and the green circles? Is that all parking? Is it some of it parking and they need to add parking? What's that?
Yeah, so there is some existing gravelled area that they're proposing to use for parking. The area in the green would be parking that would be on the grass. We have other F2 seasonal event venues and locations where we have allowed a combination of gravel and grass parking for their seasonal events.
Okay, thank you.
Here's some additional pictures from the south property line, west property line, and another one from the west property line. Here's some showing the some of the newer evergreens that they planted along the west property line and the west and north property lines. Here's a seating layout for what they're proposing in the converted riding arena for the event venue. Board members have requested information on the Lisa score on all of our petitions. So here's a slide With that, the LE value of the site is 30 and the SA value is 36 for a total Lisa score of 66. Also keep in mind that in this particular site, the majority of the improvements are already there. Staff recommended stipulations from KDOT. The existing driveway should be widened to a minimum of 20 feet. You'll see later in the presentation, it's already existing at 24 feet. And the widening should extend a minimum of 100 feet from the east pavement area. Access permit would be required from Permit Township if there's any improvement work needed. Health Department states that the plans include use for special events. Recall the petitioner did not plan to have food facilities, but planning to have caterers or food trucks. If any type of food prepared or stored is occurred on the site, plan review would be required by the Kane County Health Department, food permit required. Only bottled beverage service would be allowed if served by staff on site. Restrooms and hand washing facilities will need to be provided. Septic and well permits may be required if changes, additions are required. And petitioner will need to work with the health department to ensure all requirements are met and determine if permits are needed. These aspects would be conditions and followed through if the zoning were approved and they applied for the building permits needed for converting the pole barn to an event venue.
Why only?
Oh, let
pole,
him finish the presentation, then we'll get into questions.
Well, I don't have to go back to every slide. I'm trying to.
Yeah, but
Why
we don't wanna
only
keep
bottled-
interrupting. Go ahead and finish go ahead.
Okay.
Water resources stipulations include, they require a stormwater permit for the development. Site does contain wetlands. On the eastern end, they would require a vegetative buffer. Applicant will need secure permits for any off-site drainage work necessary to achieve a viable outfall for the stormwater detention. And Director Wilnick is here if there's any questions on that. Other staff comments, if the approved rezoning special use would bring future events into conformance with the county regulations. The structural engineer letter provided by the petitioner states the structure which is proposed to be converted from an agricultural use to an assembly use for an event facility should be evacuated if wind gusts exceed 60 miles per hour. Staff recommends that a condition be placed that the building should be structurally modified to be brought up to the adapted building codes for wind speed and snow loads, in addition to building improvements required for health safety at the time of applying for a building permit prior to use as an event venue. So this also ties into if the zoning were to be approved, building permits require bringing the building up to code for not just health and safety, but also those structural elements, and the petitioner is aware that that would be a matter of fact, even if the stipulation wasn't on there, but we recommended adding this just to clarify that the building is not necessarily suitable to be used as is, but will need future additional improvements. Zoning Board of Appeals recommended approval with additional recommended stipulations that there be no parking on the roadway at any time, that petitioner monitor sound levels at the property, the noise at the property lines do not exceed 60 decibels. These two were added by the ZBA, but were volunteered by the petitioner at the public hearing. No exterior music on the property, all must be inside the building. So the neighbors receive notice at least 30 days prior to the events that are scheduled. The petitioner be limited to 3 events per month with no events being held on Sundays. The traffic enforcement include personnel on site at least 1 hour before and after the event concludes. The petitioner is here. They have a short presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on the staff presentation at this point.
Okay.
And also note that Kane County State's Attorney Don O'Brien has also joined us if there's any questions on the pending court case and status of the violations.
All right, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Joe McMahon. I'm the attorney for the petitioner. The petitioner is here, Jay Manjarez. He's the owner of 714 Properties and lives physically at the property with his family and children. Also here this morning is Carrie Hansen from Shopee Design. She is our project coordinator and design consultant. We have a PowerPoint that I think is ready to be played, and Carrie will go through the PowerPoint as to our proposal for the use of the property and to support our request for the rezoning. And then finally, I think Mr. O'Brien is here to probably talk about some court cases. There were a number of court cases initiated. There were 5 ordinance violations filed, all of them approximately 18 to 24 months ago. All of those cases have been dismissed. For the last 18 months, Mr. Manjarrez, myself, Ms. Hansen have been working with the county to bring the property into compliance, to bring the plan, the request for rezoning to you this morning. There remains one case pending from our perspective until this process is complete. And then I'm optimistic that that case will be resolved through some type of agreement and to comply with the zoning and the special use that we're asking for. So with that, I can either answer questions now, or if it's your pleasure, Ms. Hansen will step up and run through our PowerPoint presentation.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the director. Sorry. He said there should be 3 events, but he did not specify the timing. I think the timings are important.
Hours, the hours of the events?
The hours of the events, yeah. Number 2, they are limiting the noise level to 60. Where this number come from, I believe this is too restrictive.
So to answer your question, yeah, the petition, and I think you'll see in the petitioner's presentation, they actually did stipulate hours, days and hours. The zoning board recommended a further stipulation that events not be held, allowed to be held every single weekend during the season from April to October. But the events are limited to Friday and Saturday nights, and the hours up until midnight. I think that they are spelled out in the petitioner's application. So there is a limitation, and the zoning board's recommending an additional limitation of no more than 3
So
weekends.
the hours are limited to
per night.
midnight.
And then to answer your other question, the 60 decibels was volunteered by the petitioner as a maximum amount at the property line, and that they would be responsible for measuring and maintaining that level. So that's where the 60 decibels came from.
Any other questions?
This, for
Caius?
60 decibels, this is Caius, is that like a speaking volume? Just to give us perspective again, I forget in between.
Sure, I'll let the
Yeah,
petitioner address that in their presentation as to why they picked that number.
Go ahead.
I can try to address that now. So the noise levels was an issue that was discussed quite a bit at the ZBA hearing. And I cited some guidelines from the National Association of Audiologists. And I'm trying to find that, Mr. Caius. But 60 was a level that seemed to be, and again, I'll try to put my hands on it and come back up after the
Presentation, yeah.
presentation.
Don't need the whole-
But 60 was kind of a compromise at the property level, and that the property owner would monitor that with a noise monitoring device at the property line. Having said that, I mean, I don't know that the county I don't think the county has an ordinance that sets a specific decibel level. So that's one issue for you to consider, whether you want that specific limitation on one piece of property when it doesn't apply across the rest of the county, but we're going to comply with whatever stipulations you recommend.
Darty, you have a question?
Yeah, Mark, can you go back 4 slides in your presentation? Uh,
Yeah, which slide would you like to see?
it's the text about bottles.
I don't think we had a slide
That's right.
that stipulated hours in the staff presentation. It is,
No, there wasn't.
I believe it is in the petitioner's, in the petition and in the petitioner's presentation.
Okay, I'm talking about bottles. See, this
I'm
is
not
why I
sure.
tried to stop you at the time, so we didn't have to go looking for it. Well, okay, forward. There. Only bottled beverage servers. Back one. Why would you do that?
This is a
Health
function of the
department
health.
says only. Oh, okay, but so no one there can answer the question?
No, generally, this is, they're making it clear for the petitioner and for the board in approving this, that depending on the level of food service that they would do, they would need Kane County Health Department permits. They have different levels of permits for bars, for serving any type of a food. In this case, they're representing that these would be catered events. The caterers also have to have food licenses with the Kane County Health Department. So, I mean, best I can explain it is that they are explaining what their understanding of the level of food service and beverage service would be. But whatever they do at an event, they need to check with the health department for what level of licensing is required.
Right, but only bottled beverage service. So the risk of broken glass is more important than to let them serve cans. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I understand it that there's a different level of licensing required if there were a bartender and percent of serving drinks, cutting lemons, limes, those types of things.
So this is only because if the staff that's there serve on site, is that? But this is a health department requirement?
Yes, this would
Okay.
be a function of their actual building and occupancy permit if the zoning were to be approved.
All right, because this doesn't include alcohol, does it?
That would be, they'd have to apply for a liquor license.
Right,
and
so this is
some of those
only,
stipulations.
yes, okay, there's only beverages that serve, if they don't have if they're serving themselves with the catering. Mark?
Davis here. If memory serves, this phrase, this bottled beverage service is not to be taken quite as literally as it appears. It's the idea is the difference between a bartender serving drinks and
Right.
having prepackaged beverages. It could be cans, it could be water, it could be bottles of beer, cans of beer. That's, so it shouldn't be taken as literally as it appears there, is by recollection of that particular health department standard.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Comment 60 dB, according to the CDC, is normal talking.
Okay, it's pretty low.
Answered that.
All right, any other questions or comments? Anything else you want to present or?
We can either, it's your preference. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we're glad to
Go ahead,
present. Okay.
let's get that out the way.
No.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Hansen. I'm the Director of Planning and Government Services for Shopee Design Associates. We're located in Oswego, Illinois. Thank you for listening to us this morning and indulging in our presentation. Hopefully, a lot of the questions that have come up will be a little bit more clarified in our presentation. Just real briefly, this is a 10-acre site. It's located at 12 North 011 Juan Road in Burlington Township. It is unincorporated Kane County presently with an F zoning classification. This is very similar to Mark's slide, but just emphasizing that all surrounding property is zoned either F or F1. Those areas that you see in the village of Burlington are also zoned ag. So those are zoned A1. Point being that all surrounding property is zoned within the county's farming district categories, and the predominant use is agriculture. Our specific request, we are asking to rezone the 10 acres from F to F1 and F2 with a special use for agritourism intensive. The F1 parcel would be approximately 7.25 acres for the existing residents and continued farm use. This would actually bring the existing property into compliance. Your F1 zoning category allows residences, your F category does not. So that is why we chose to request the F1 for the farm and residents. The F2 special use property would be the remaining 2.75 acres. That would be for the operation of the event venue. We would be looking to use the large farm building and the horse stables. This is the same zoning exhibit you saw, but that 7.25 acres is the green. You'll see the house in there. And then all of the uses associated with the event venue would be in that 2.75 acre piece, which would be zoned F2. So a little bit about the petitioner. Jay purchased the property back in 2020 at the height of COVID. Farms and specifically horses and associated uses have been an integral part of his family, having grown up in Washington, surrounded by farming and the horse culture. Farming is a unique setting, allowing his family to gather and celebrate traditions and life events in a setting that's reminiscent of his childhood. That's why the property appealed to him, and that's why he purchased it. As Joe mentioned, Jay lives on the property. He would be an on-site operator of the business. And as a result of that, obviously wants to maintain the property to the highest standards because it's a reflection of where he lives and his family. His background, he has been operating a glazing business in Schaumburg for the past 20 years. So he and his family have a background in business and operating businesses. Specifically, we are requesting the operation of an event venue for up to 200 attendees. The types of events that we would like to hold include weddings, birthdays, quinceañeras, anniversaries, local school events, community events, and fundraisers. He is proposing to use the stables, which you'll see on the lower left picture. Beautiful facility, and the large farm building, which you see to the right on the slide. Quick overview of the specifics of the site plan. The entrance is from Juan Road. As Mark indicated, this is 24 feet wide. KDOT had requested a minimum of 20 feet, so we meet that requirement. We have 100 parking spaces proposed, 75 in the existing gravel area that you see in the gray, and 25 new spaces, which would be in that green grass area. The ADA spaces that are required are nearest to the building entrance. The detention is proposed just north of the new grass parking. You'll see that in kind of that bluish shape. It will discharge to the west into the existing drainage ditch along Juan Road. We have enhanced landscaping along the west and north property lines to fill in the voids in the existing vegetation. There's also a relocated shed that was previously on the east side of that large main building that will be relocated to the west side of the property adjacent to Juan Road, also providing additional screening. This is a blow up of the enhanced landscaping. You'll see those recently planted evergreens in the northwest portion of the property. You saw those in Mark's presentation. I should also note, there's a natural tree line along all 4 property lines, northeast, south, and west. In addition to those recently planted evergreens, we are proposing new screening, which is a combination of trees and shrubs along the north property line, adjacent to the residence, and additionally to fill in those vegetation gaps. We're also proposing a new hedgerow along the remainder of that west property line, south of the evergreens, intended to screen at the car headlight level. If there are cars exiting from the parking areas, that will help to screen those to the property to the west. And here you can see a better location of that relocated shed, which would also do the same thing in terms of screening the headlights. The operation is proposed as a seasonal venture from mid-March through October. Events will be held on Fridays and Saturdays from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. And we have agreed to limit that to 1 event per weekend. So it would be a Friday or a Saturday, but not a Friday and a Saturday each weekend. Rehearsals, if they're necessary for the likes of a wedding, for example, would be held on Wednesdays and Thursdays between 5 and 8 p.m. And there's no music associated with those rehearsals. There are no event-related activities on Mondays or Tuesdays. And no paid events will be occurring on Sundays as a result of our agreement and to the stipulations by the ZBA. With regard to the music and the entertainment, live bands and DJs are inside the main venue only. That's that top picture you see. You'll see that there's a raised stage at the north end of the building. And there's an existing overhead glass door, which Jay is going to replace with a more appropriate sound deadening material. It's nice to let the light in there, but given the concerns with the noise, he wants to make sure that he's doing what he can to dampen that sound. In addition, he will be installing soundproofing to the walls and the ceiling. You'll see that second picture is what he is proposing with black acoustic ceiling tiles. And then the material that he'll be using for the walls for the sound control and damping is that last image at the bottom. As discussed, we are agreeing to a 60 dBA or decibel at the property line. This, while it is of conversation, it's also a typical regulation. We do a lot of work in multiple municipalities in the area. And for those that do have noise ordinances, the typical dBAs that you'll find at the property line are anywhere between 55 and 65. So we picked the middle. We felt that that was reasonable. Again, we will be responsible for the monitoring of that. Jay already has the equipment to do that. And we would be responsible for making sure that that is the case. Regarding food service, all food service will be done by catering. There is no on-site kitchen or food prep associated with the business. The liquor, again, will be done in compliance with the county's liquor code. It is packaged, as you were mentioning, bottled or cans. It's a difference in terms of how it gets served. There's a dry bar that's available for event use. That means that they can hand it out, but they are not going to be preparing drinks. That's a completely different type of liquor license and requirements for the bartenders and the training and all of that. They will not be doing that here, a little more simple. There was a fair amount of discussion at the ZBA regarding parking and traffic. As we noted, there are 100 parking spaces. This is in accordance with the county's code for this type of event. Venue, it's 1 space for every 2 people. That does include employees in that ratio. However, we do have an additional space that's paved next to the existing home between actually the stables and the home, which is where employees will park separate from the 200 spaces. As we noted, the entrance is 24 feet wide. The parking aisles additionally are all 24 feet wide. That's pretty standard for perpendicular parking on both sides. We have 210 feet to the first parking space. KDOT had requested 100 for stacking, so we have more than double the requested stacking amount. Jay will be hiring a professional traffic management team, which will be solely dedicated to operations at the entrance and throughout the parking area, directing people to open spaces with the intention of promoting safe ingress and egress and site circulation. We will additionally be providing directional signage for entering and exiting the event venue. And as previously stipulated, there will be no on-street parking associated with the operations. So we've been working with the county for the past 18 months. More than a year ago now, we met with the technical staff review committee and then followed that up with an on-site visit and inspection by various county departments on March 30th. So just about a year ago. From that inspection, the county developed a list of tasks and recommended actions for us to undertake. And so that's what we've been busy doing for the past year, working on and addressing all of those requirements. Oops. Specifically, we have a new septic tank and field, which has been installed, inspected, and granted a permit by the county. We've been working with the county's engineers on the appropriate stormwater management design and have addressed and are addressing all of those events and requests and will fully comply. We received an inspection letter from a structural engineer verifying the building integrity for the proposed use. Again, with the additional stipulation that anything beyond 60 miles per hour will be required as part of the building permit to make sure that it's structurally sound for winds and loads beyond. We were requested to and submitted a traffic study, which has been reviewed and accepted by KDOT. As Mark mentioned, the county had been receiving a lot of requests, and not just Kane County. These types of event venues are popping up all over in kind of the more rural areas of the Chicago region. As a result, the county developed a specific special use, and I think it's important enough to read it if you'll indulge me. The special use for agritourism intensive is defined as activities located on an operational farm that bring customers on site for the purpose of education or aesthetic appreciation of agricultural products, practices, or culture. Activities may include agriculture culture center, agritourism event venue, which is what we are, farmers market, participatory farm, rural retreat, tasting room, transient agritourism, lodging, and restaurant that are farm-based. Our specific use in that definition is for the agritourism event venue. That is an actively farmed parcel, which this is, also used to hold public or private events that are intended to impart event attendees with an educational or aesthetic appreciation of agriculture or farming culture. Event examples include, but are not limited to, weddings, rodeos, horse shows, and agriculture festivals. Rancho La Muñeca is exactly this. I think when the county was thinking of the types of event venues, it evokes what we are proposing. And so we would very much appreciate your positive recommendation to the full county board. We have worked very closely with the county. It's Jay's intent to share his family, his culture with the community in a way that he is a good neighbor to his surrounding properties. The special use ensures that there will be stipulations and conditions placed upon that that he has to comply with. If he does not comply, then that special use goes away. His liquor license goes away. So there's an enforcement arm with a special use that did not exist previously. Therefore, we are requesting your favorable consideration. Thank you.
All right. I have one question about the capacity of the building itself during events. Was a maximum number of people?
Yes, the structural engineer was informed of the intended capacity, and he says that the capacity is appropriate of that building.
And what is that number?
200.
200? Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Give me the
Go ahead.
pronunciation one more time. Rancho.
Rancho La Muñeca,
Thank you.
which means little doll. He named it after his daughter.
Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention again that Assistant State's Attorney Don O'Brien is here if there's any questions about the current legal proceedings. And I believe there are at least one or two objectors present that also wish to speak.
All right. Any other questions or comments by committee members?
You need a motion.
Well, we're gonna let the,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna wait.
No, this is for the motion if you need.
Okay, let's let the petitioner speak at this
Yeah.
point.
Want to hear directly from the petitioner?
Any objectors?
Thank you. I live at 11.
State your name, please.
Jeff Harris. I live at 11N 722 McGill Road, which it's not on this. My house is further south on this aerial off the picture. So my house would be where the RD is in McGill Road on that map. I live in that Whispering Oak subdivision. So from my house to the petitioner's property is just under half a mile. I was at the zoning board or the zoning board meeting last Tuesday. I was one of the objectors that spoke along with two of the neighbors. The neighbor immediately to the west, right across the street. And there's a house immediately northwest of the subject property. And one of our, unfortunately, the other two neighbors weren't able to attend today, but I know they wanted to. One of the big complaints we have is the noise that's generated from this. They ran illegally all last year, and almost every weekend it was loud. I mean, we're laying there on a Friday and Saturday night at midnight, trying to get some sleep, and the music is loud. I mean, windows closed, air conditioning on. And again, I live half mile away and I couldn't sleep. Those poor neighbors that live immediately adjacent, I can't imagine, and I know the state's attorney can confirm, and with sheriff's reports, they had to call the sheriff many, many, many times because of the issues. Not only just the noise complaints, and again, the neighbors testified this last Tuesday, so I'm kind of speaking on their behalf. I know they had parking problems. They had people coming from this event venue onto their property. And the petitioners indicated that they're trying to make amends for those, but we just want to make sure that the proper stipulations and conditions are being addressed so that those issues don't continue anymore. Because this facility is a big disruption on the neighborhood. I get it, it's a rural area. There's not a lot of houses out there, but there's still, we still live out there, and you can actually, on this map, you can see at the very north end of the screen, there's a subdivision up there that's in Burlington. And we've got neighbors up there that have said they can, when they have events at this facility, they can hear the music all the way up there, and they're further away than where I am. That's probably 3/4 of a mile away. So noise is a big, big concern of us. So we appreciate the petitioner is willing to limit the decibels at 60 decibels at the property line. My question is, how is there, what good mechanism is there to enforce that? You know, the petitioner said that they'll have a sound meter, but in reality, if us neighbors have a noise complaint, we're gonna call the sheriff. Sheriff's gonna come out there, but the sheriffs don't have any way of verifying that 60 decibel. They don't carry sound meters with them. So my question is, if the county board puts that condition, how is it practically enforceable? Just because the sheriff that does the enforcement, you know, they don't have any practical way of verifying that. The petitioner agreed to do, you know, limited the events at the facility, which is great, and keeping the neighbors in mind, we appreciate that. But I'd really like clarification on what's considered an event. You know, at the zoning board, the petitioner indicated they've got a big family and they like to have family events there. So my question is this going to be limited to 3 events, whether it be their personal events or private events? Because my concern is that they have family parties there and it's an unpaid event and it's not, you know, in the end, they're getting more than 3 events per month and still causing the problem to the neighbors. So I'd just like it clarified, you know, specifically what those events are, whether they're private and public events or paid events only. One of the conditions that the zoning board put on was that, again, to give us neighbors notice of when those events are going to happen so we can kind of prepare that we're going to be up till midnight that night because the music's going to be loud. The zoning board said that the neighbors shall receive notice at least 30 days prior to events. I'd like clarification on, you know, how that notification is going to occur and which neighbors get notified. You know, perfect world, I think the easiest solution is if they have a website, they post the events to the website on a calendar, and then all the neighbors have access to it so that, you know, anyone can go on and see it, not just the 2 neighbors immediately adjacent. You know, the petitioner shouldn't have to go around and canvass the neighborhood every time he wants to have an event to notify us. So I think there's a better way of getting out that outreach and notification to us neighbors. The petitioner indicated that there's some overhead doors on the building that they want to remove. I think part of the reasons why the music was so loud last year is because in the summertime, they do open up all the barn doors and everything. So the sound that's contained inside the building goes right out, you know, through the neighborhood. I request that a stipulation be put in place that they do follow through, you know, and remove those doors or keep those doors closed so that sound does not travel. Getting back to the limiting the noise. And that the petitioner agreed to hiring the traffic enforcement. I'd like to have that hopefully expanded on, that it be a third party that is hired for it and not family members, so that there's a little bit more oversight and there's professionals doing that, you know, traffic control. Because again, one of the neighbors immediately adjacent, that was one of their big issues, is that the traffic was overflowing and causing them problems. People were parking in their driveways and such, you know, related to this event or to this facility. So again, I applaud the petitioners for cleaning up the property and wanting to run a business. And I just want to make sure it's run in a manner that's not negatively impacting, you know, the rest of us neighbors. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other objectors out there? All right, seeing none. Can I get a motion? Can I get a second?
That was.
That was second. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan. Can you call on me when it's appropriate, please?
You got a question?
I do indeed.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I was sitting on the liquor commission when there was quite a bit of controversy about the Milk Pail property up on Route 25 north of Elgin. And I think it would be very good if you called on Assistant State's Attorney O'Brien, because he helped us with the problems that we were having there. And the way it was resolved was this. A sheriff did not want to have to go buy a lot of expensive equipment. So the way it was resolved was that our ordinances would read that if you have a property and you are within hearing distance of a venue like this, then you can go to the edge of your property. And if you can hold a conversation with a neighbor or your guest or your family member or the police officer that you've called to investigate, if you can hold a conversation in a normal voice at the edge of your property, then the noise level is acceptable. So that was a way that nobody had to buy any equipment and the neighbors could be, there's always the chance that you can hear somebody else's radio playing and somebody will be bothered by that. But if you and I can hold a conversation in a normal speaking voice, even while that radio is playing, then that would be considered an acceptable noise level. So that's my first suggestion, is that you talk a little bit with Assistant State's Attorney O'Brien. And then my second question is this: is this building going to be HVAC? Is it going to have air conditioning and heat and ventilation so that the building doors can be closed while the events are taking place, therefore not bothering the neighbors, and there isn't the temptation to open all the doors and windows in order to get proper ventilation? Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do you have any answer to that, Mark?
Well, the answer to the second question would be yes, to meet the building code requirements for an assembly use structure, it does need to have a HVAC equipment that would meet the requirements for fresh air based on the and air changes based on the occupancy and use.
All right.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
this is O'Brien.
Ms. Allen asked me to address the Milk Pail property. The Milk Pail has 3 liquor licenses for 3 different facilities on that premises. They have agreed to put in their liquor license that there will be no outdoor amplified music on the premises. They no longer have a license, and they do not no longer have a facility to go and have outdoor bands as they did many years ago. So the liquor license statute ordinance here in King County has its own noise ordinance. It was put in there because there were some places that were holding outdoor rock concerts. Some of the farms and some of the places with large areas of property, they were holding rock concerts that were held outside, and you could hear them all around the area. So there's an amplified music provision that if you have a liquor license, that you will agree to certain things, including having to do with amplified music. We're not at that stage here with regard to this specific piece of property. They have not applied for a liquor license. That's a step down the road, assuming that this committee and the board ultimately produce that. So that's what Ms. Allen was talking about. There were several lawsuits involving the Milk Pail, and it was resolved by the owners to agree to no more outdoor amplified music. Thank you.
All right.
That's
Good.
Caius, yeah, I think I just got the, to speak to Mr. Ryan's, the Liquor Control Commission's minutes, and that's stipulated on the 3 bars as far as the liquor is concerned. It seems like a reasonable way to do it. It does, the thing that came up to me, or that is sticking in my craw, again, I think the neighbor brought it up there, was paid versus personal. Would the noise still be, if it's a personal thing, can they just drag everything outside and make it really noisy, or does that apply? Or I'm not sure exactly how
You talking about there's a family event?
let's say it's a family event, right?
Okay.
There is a general noise ordinance in Kane County, which talks about which talks about loud, raucous noise that is continuing. As I said, there is another ordinance having to do with liquor license, establishments that have liquor licenses, certain establishments. There is also a county ordinance that has to do with zoning. That's the one that goes into decibels. That primarily has to do with industrial applications. If you are going to build a factory, what kind of a repetitive noise can you make? It can only be of a certain decibel. And that comes from a state statute and also from an IEPA statute. So you're dealing essentially with a general ordinance that has to do with loud noise. There is nothing in either the liquor license or ordinance or in the general ordinance having to do with public or private. And I'm unaware of what the distinction is here with regard to what kind of events the petitioner here is planning to hold. So you may want them to ask them to address that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good question. If you can help, just.
The
flesh that
petitioner
out a
would
little bit.
agree to that, excuse me, the petitioner would agree to the stipulation for 60 decibels,
Here we go.
7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Mark.
I understand one of the other questions was asking for a clarification between paid events and private or family events. So maybe the petitioner could address that. And then I'm also happy to give our staff opinion on what would be applicable for this property.
So the petitioner is asking for 3 paid events per month. He lives there. So if he has a family birthday party, he has to comply with all of the other county ordinances. But for a family party, you know, that's not a situation where he's applying for a liquor license for a party, or he's just having a birthday party or a get together with his family. All of the other county ordinances would apply to that event. If he violates an ordinance, that's the enforcement mechanism. But specifically, he's asking for permission, or agreeing to the stipulation that it would be 3 paid events per month during the season.
So the other ordinances that would be applicable for this property would be the special event ordinance, which applies to all properties, that if they were going to have a family or private event that was going to have more than 100 people, they would be required to apply for a special event permit for that specific event. And those permits are reviewed by a collaboration of departments. We get input from Sheriff, Health Department, Water Resources, our building staff, Liquor Commission on whether or not, to issue that specific special event permit based on, what the performance of the property has been, if there's any known issues. So if they were going to have a family event for more than 100 persons, they would need to additionally, even with this zoning petition, if it was going to be in excess of the events allowed for paid events, apply for a special event permit, and that would be reviewed by staff in conjunction with whatever their level of compliance is.
And I think the representative said or the planner said that they will hold a stipulation, or voluntarily say there's never over 60 decibels. So for me, that's reasonable, as long as they stick to that.
Or,
Along the same lines, Joe, I guess the question is, do they intend to conduct themselves in private events the same way they're asking for in these for hire events? And would they be willing to have some language that would reflect that says, you know, these standards are going to apply to us if it's a family party, in addition to any of the 3 events per month?
Short answer is yes. Yes, they would.
All right.
all right. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff Rose, Assistant State's Attorney.
Ken, pull the mic down.
Your mic. Sorry. Is that better? Yes.
Yes.
Joe, there was some question asked about notice. About to which events, public or private, would the notice that has been offered be given?
So, I mean, from our perspective, the notice would apply to public events, public paid events. If he's having, you know, family over for a birthday party, that doesn't seem to require notice. Now, if there's a special use, because he's expecting more than 100 people and he goes through that process, again, that's not a paid event. I think the notice would apply to paid events.
Or anything that had enough people that would trigger the special event?
Special use,
Yeah.
correct, special event.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Christmas parties.
All right. Seeing none, roll call vote.
Berman. Doherty. Mr. Doherty.
Yes. I just,
Gotcha. Thank you. Iqbal.
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Linder. Did he sign off? Okay, he's off. Davis.
Davis, yes.
Caius.
Guys, yes.
Williams. Gotcha. Ford.
Ford, yes.
It passes.
All right. Yeah, Williams.
Abstains. Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to our next petition,
They did do a lot of work here. You know that?
number 4627.
Great, thank you. This is a more typical standard rezoning petition. This is requesting F District farming to F1 rural residential. This is a location on the 2040 future land use map and an area plan for agriculture. This is located right on the western county line up in Hampshire Township. It's located on the overall 24 land use map. These next 2 maps are 2 maps we're introducing to help, again, facilitate an understanding of the zoning petition and where it's located, and relative to the county's land use strategy and map. So this is where it's located in the county, and in the 2040 land use map, you can see it's clearly in the area planned for agriculture. Next map is its location in the conceptual land use strategy. We're introducing this map again just to help remind us all, the county board has adopted a conceptual land use strategy for the entire county. And this is an area for agriculture. Here it is again on the zoning map. Again, the white is all zoned F district farming. You see some special uses for gravel mining, the village of Hampshire further to the east. Here it is on an aerial. You can see everything to the left with all parcels on it is DeKalb County. This is again right on the county line. You can see there are a few small other farmsteads in the area, but is predominantly being farmed. Here we're beginning to have a close-up. The entire parcel is outlined in gold. The area proposed to be split off, the buildings and a little bit of land as part of the F1 rezoning petition that would allow the farmland to be sold separately from the buildings, which has been advantageous to our farming operations for many decades now. Here's a close-up. You can see there's a house, a corn crib, Quonset hut type building, and a pole barn. Recommended stipulations from Water Resources is their typical stipulation, just clarifying when new impervious area would trigger stormwater management measures by the stormwater ordinance. If approved, the rezoning will not intensify the existing residential uses in the ag area. Our Regional Planning Commission was not applicable. Zoning Board of Appeals approved with the staff recommended stipulation. And it's before you this morning for your consideration. I believe someone representing the petitioner is here. If you have any questions, thank you.
Any questions or comments? Online? Seeing none?
Davis moves it.
All right, can we get a second?
Williams, second.
Second? Kenyon? So no questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote?
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Doherty,
Doherty, yes.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon, Linder. Keeps jumping on and off. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Ford.
Ford, yes.
Passes.
Passes. All right, moving on, Code Enforcement Division. It's still good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, John Mall, King County Code Enforcement Officer. Last month, we had a busy month. We lost Colin partway through the month, and we still had 50 new cases. 50 new cases, we closed 33, and we continued with 50 cases actively working throughout the month. It was quite a busy month with the weather being so nice, I believe. Also, we had the new carpet up on the 4th floor, so we were helping get that move done, and the guys did a great professional job up with that. The painters and the carpet guys did great. And then Santos Diaz sitting next to me here started last week, and he's the new code enforcement inspector. He's already doing a great job. We're really pleased with him. He's bilingual, and he comes from Hanover Park Police Department with 24 years as a retired police officer. Most recently, he was just working at the Kane County Public Defender's Office as an investigator. I'll let him speak to you a little further.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to work for King County. I bring a good experience, good character, and looking forward to continuing the investigation part of the code enforcement department, and looking forward for a lot of compliance.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, you just have to always match Vern's sweaters when you come and show up here.
Sounds good.
Okay,
We have nothing further. Thank you. Any questions?
good catch.
I didn't get the memo.
Any questions or comments about the for our division, the code enforcement? All right, seeing none, we're gonna move on to planning and special projects.
This morning, you just have a resolution. This is a standard resolution required for all departments on an annual basis, listing and getting approval for procurement cards for persons in each department. We're requesting for this year. You may be aware there's a changeover from one vendor to another. And we previously had 2 cards for our department for Janice Hill and myself, and I'm requesting those again, as well as adding Karen Miller because of all her work working on the Fabulous Fox National Water Trail projects, and Matt Tansley, who's a lot of work on our grants and programs for Growing for Kane.
All right. Any questions, comments? Well, can we get a motion?
Williams moves.
William moves, Kenyon seconds. William moves, Kenyon seconds. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Doherty,
Doherty, yes.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Davis. Oh, he's gone. Caius,
Caius, yes.
Williams,
Williams, yes.
Ford.
Ford, yes. All right, moving on. Do we have any subdivision reports?
No subdivision.
All right,
Under environmental resources, we have a resolution authorizing the number of procurement cards issued to environmental and water resources and their transaction limits. There's no change to this for our department. There is one card for Margaret Claire Ryan, our recycling coordinator, and one card for myself as the director.
all right. Can I get a motion in a second?
Williams.
So moved. Berman, second.
Eight ball second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Doherty,
Doherty, yes.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Ford.
Ford, yes. All right, moving on.
Our next item is an ordinance amending the Kane County Code, Chapter 28, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. And we have Sarah Hinshaw here, our Sustainability Manager, that is going to present that ordinance.
Good morning. We have 3 updates that we would like to do. One is updating the definitions. They are from 2016, and there's been several updates just in the EV world. Secondly, we are updating the use of signs on EV chargers just to comply with the zoning and permitting that's already in our ordinance. And lastly, we are amending the amount of space for EV chargers to comply with the new Illinois law saying that we need 1 EV capable vehicle parking space per resident.
All right. Can we get a motion a second?
Caius move.
Guys moves. Eight ball seconds. Any questions? Eight ball?
Yeah, I have a question on what statute are you referring to in this one? You are trying to make it equal to the requirements of this new statute, correct?
Correct.
What statute is it? It should be referenced.
For the law that the public law should be referenced in there.
Yeah, the EV enablement.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Use your mic, please.
Oh, yeah, you are saying that there are so many red lines here and they're coming from the statute.
Yes.
What is that citation? What statute number is it that we can go and refer to and say, this is exactly like that?
It is in the crossed off lines in there. It's the Public Act, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head.
It's in the resolution as well, Public Act 103-0053.
Thank you.
103-100. Okay,
It was passed January 1st, 2024.
okay. Then I have a. Do you want it? Okay. My question is, we are going from EV readiness to EV enablement. Looking at the definition of enablement, and this concerns not me, but I think the entire county, every house that we have that was built in the last 60 years has 220 volt. Generally because we use AC, air conditioning, and it has a breaker. And then it has a generally 40 amp. So what is more required by the new construction? If I'm building a new house, should I do anything different, which is what we have been doing?
Just that it has to be inside the garage, that it has to be capable that you can reach it within, I think, 3 feet and ready to be put in for the new voltage, 24 volt and the new electric panel.
So you are requiring that 220 volt should be available in the garage.
Yes.
Okay, it is not very clear.
So it is saying that it is capable and ready to do it. And it's not, so there's a difference between EV capable, EV ready. EV ready means that it's already there and in place. So you can just easily plug in a charger.
Okay, so enablement would be that I have a 220 volt available with a box, say closed up, but the wiring should be there. But the readiness would be if I put the plug on it and put the outlet, and that would be readiness.
Yes, once you get the outlet there,
So
correct.
difference is very small. Okay.
Alright.
I think.
Go ahead, William.
So the intent is on a single family home that there be electric charging facilities constructed with new construction. Is that correct?
That'd be ready for it, yes.
So the language of this seems to combine the single family homes requirement with the multifamily residential buildings requirement and lumps them together, which I find a bit problematic because it says single family homes and multifamily residential buildings shall provide dedicated parking to install EV capable parking spaces. I really think what that needs to say is that there will be EV capabilities installed in the garage.
Okay.
In other words, if I build a house, I don't
Mhm.
have to have a parking space outside my garage with the charging station. Is that correct?
It does, to my knowledge, it doesn't specify that in the actual thing that was passed in January. But it doesn't specifically say garage or not.
Yeah, I think I understand it with respect to an apartment building, right? If you have an apartment building, you're gonna have parking spaces, you're gonna have EV charging stations. That makes a lot of sense. I think we need to just tighten up the language on the single family home.
All right, thank you.
All right, Gordy, go ahead.
Yeah,
Gardner?
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because if you're charging up at home at the end of the day, you need to plug in overnight. So there's not enough spaces there's not enough need right now, first of all. And second of all, there's no explanation of who's paying for this. Who's going to pay for the electricity?
The owner.
Madam
Anyone?
Chair. Oh,
Do you want me?
go ahead.
Question. My concern is with multifamily dwellings. I assume this exists for new multifamily dwellings. But that restriction per one electric vehicle charging station per car will then have to be parity because some people are going to be keeping their cars for a long period of time. Regular fuel cars, gasoline cars, and combustion engine cars. There we go. That's the right word. So are there going to be something for electric vehicles, one per apartment, and then also an equity one for combustion cars? Or how's that going to be working? Or is there going to be each parking space allowed, each one will have an electric charger?
I would just jump in and note that the language being proposed is following the state statute language. So that's how it was stated in the state statute. And the EV capable, if you're building a new multifamily dwelling and you have 10 parking spaces, for example, that 220 voltage is run to each parking space. So as those residents in that apartment complex convert over, then you would actually make it EV ready where you have a plug-in for that person. But it would already be run underneath the parking lot. So you aren't tearing up a parking lot in order to convert those over to electric vehicle spacing. So for that resident that's dwelling in that apartment unit, if they have a gas powered car, they're parking in the same spot they would be as if they had a electric vehicle.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question for
Go
that,
ahead and
please.
then Tap had it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let
Madam.
Madam.
Go ahead,
Chair
Madam
finish.
Chair.
Because of the extreme weight of these electric vehicles, they're going to have to be, they're very heavy. They're going to have additional supports in the parking garages if there's a parking garage. So is that going to be addressed with this as well for permitting?
We have not seen anything that has changed the structural design of a parking garage for electric vehicles.
Okay, that we just should be paying attention to that because they are extremely heavy. And I've heard that there may
No,
be
they're
some
not.
compromise.
They're not.
Yeah, I'm not too
I mean,
sure about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I wasn't done. You kind of just skipped off of me. Ron,
Go ahead.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
who's going to pay for these parking spots in multifamily parking?
The developer of the property would have to install these as part of their development
For new construction.
for new construction,
Yeah.
correct? Thank you.
I think what Darty might be getting at is whether or not is a cost going to be passed on to the renters for this?
It could be.
How?
Yeah.
If you're running the line to the parking lot, how do they, every time it's a different person plugging in, how do they know who to charge? What's set up for that? There's nothing set up for that.
Right. Tepe?
Not
Thank you, Mr.
done.
Chair.
Oh, okay, go ahead. I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
Sorry, Vern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Mr. Darty will probably agree with me on this, I want to first off note that what Mr. Iqbal said initially is that all of the homes built within the past 50 or 60 years have a correct amount of current and amperage going into them to be able to do this. And as long as it's in the garage, it's fine. So in order to properly charge an electric vehicle overnight, you need, 40 to 50 amps and a 240 volt system. That'll charge the car at the rate of about 30 miles an hour. So over time, that will do it. If they put those kinds of systems in at apartment buildings, they could probably put in some number of them. They don't need to do it for every parking spot. Thank you.
Well, I would, again, I wasn't finished, but I would agree with Mr. Tepe on our cars, but the majority of the electric vehicles out there do not charge at 30 or 40 miles an hour. They're actually half that. They don't have the charging capability. So that's a problem. And again, no one's answered my question. So the developer's got to build a charge port in case somebody moves in and wants to use it, and then they have to eat the cost of that?
Mr. Ford.
Yeah, I think I know what Darty's talking about. So at your house, there's a meter electrical meter that says
No,
where,
multifamily.
No, that's what I'm getting at.
And
And then in a multifamily, usually there's a meter for each unit. So where are these? What meter is this attached to for multifamily?
There's actually federal guidelines on metering electric vehicle charging stations for multifamily units. There's many different ways to do it. The most common way is that all the chargers that are installed in a multifamily parking area are on an app. And those apps then are signed on by the renters that are using those facilities, and they charge you, you scan your card, it charges you, and then you're charged on that app. There's 3 or 4 different methods to be able to do that. As the owner of the facility, they could just aggregate all of them and then just spread it amongst all the renters. But there are apps that do allow you to charge the person that's actually charging their car for that actual electricity.
Okay, just so everybody knows, most of those charging stations where you have an app, that they grossly overcharge the user. I talk about massive. So if we want to start setting up a situation where there's going to be fighting and people are going to be pissed off, then that's fine. But that's not, I don't think that's what we want from this bill. And also, go ahead.
There's a pretty standard rate at which we're charging for our charging stations, as well as everyone else in the area. Specifically, I can talk about ChargePoint, and we are not even recovering our costs for networking those stations. And so it just really is looked and frowned upon to charge these exorbitant rates at the charging stations.
I'm definitely frowning upon it. Okay, and then it says that I gotta find the spot. Non-residential, 1,000 spaces or less, have a minimum ratio of 2%, who's going to pay for those? Are those paid spots?
Again, that would be the actual electrical and the station installation would be by the developer. And then they would be similar to our units that are charge point units that the users of those stations would scan their card and they would pay for the electricity at those stations.
Okay. What do you know? What do you know? What the rate is?
We charge 15 cents per kilowatt.
15 cents per kilowatt is pretty standard in all the chargers in our area.
Okay, so just so you know, several of the charge point installations at government buildings are charging $1 per minute. So I'd like something to say reasonable rate or something. I mean,
I
like I said,
think in that instance, the most chargers don't charge by the minute, they charge by the kilowatt. What you might actually be referring to is that in high overturn areas where people tend to leave their vehicle at the charger beyond the point at which it's fully charged, there is an ability to actually start back charging the person for not moving their vehicle. And so that higher exorbitant rate may actually be a back charge trying to encourage that resident to move their vehicle so others can use the charger.
okay. I understand you have no way of knowing that I'm an expert on this. I've been driving an electric car for a couple of years. I'm not talking about rates for staying after your charge. I'm talking about you pull up, you plug in, and it starts whacking you $1 a minute. I can tell you at least one station where it does it. So I want us to be aware of the abuse that's happening with this and the waste that's happening with this, because these non-residential charging stations are 40 amp chargers, which, like Vern said, they're maximum of 40 miles in an hour, closer to 15, 20 average. And that's a waste of time and space in a non-residential commercial development. So I just would like us to consider it.
We would be really interested in finding out where that station is and the owner of that station, if you have any of that information, because we'd definitely like to look into that. Thank you.
Okay, Mount Prospect Public Works.
Yeah, I'm gonna make, anything else, Darty?
Nope.
All right. Williams?
So the changes to our code, is this a result of a change in Illinois law?
That's how it started. Yes, because we needed to comply with that. It's
Okay.
also part of the EV readiness program that we are in out of Mayor's caucus, where we are designing all from things like fleets to commercial advertising, updating several different areas on to be EV ready.
So does the new law, and I forgive me because I don't have a copy, I haven't read it, but does the new law require 100% of large multifamily developments to be EV capable?
Yes,
Okay.
all the new construction.
So that would mean if we someone built a large apartment and there were 100 units and 200 spaces, 200 spaces would have to have EV charging facilities. Is that correct?
It would have to be capable of it. As of right now, my understanding it's 2% of the actual parking lot that would be dedicated to EV chargers.
Okay. So I think to Mr. Doherty's point, Gary, I think this is, a mandate that the state's imposing on us, which we don't have a lot of say in. I mean, Mr. Doherty raises good points, but I don't know as if we have the ability to address those points at our level of government. And this is only for developments within unincorporated Kane County. Is that correct?
Correct.
So City of Aurora, City of Geneva, City of Batavia, they're going to have their own requirements.
The state law applies within municipalities too. So our ordinance only applies within unincorporated, but they're subject to the same state law.
And so to me, getting back to my point earlier, a single family home I built a house a year ago. I put in one charging. I have a 3-car garage. I put in one electric outlet for the future. This would require, if I understand it correctly, 3 outlets in my 3-car garage. Is that correct?
No, it would require one.
One. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Has our state's attorney office reviewed this?
I am not familiar with this particular ordinance, but my understanding is that this is all mandated by a state statute and does not give you much leeway in what it provides. And as Water Resources said, this also comes from Washington as well, which is promulgated a statute that is just provides the same thing and is just as big.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
Yeah, my suggestion would be is that if the committee decides to move this forward, that it should at least be looked at by state's attorney before exec to verify that it does in fact meet all of the required standards.
Mr. Ford.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Kenyon. I appreciate the comments and the clarifying responses. But, you know, again, I read this and somebody, and I'm a lawyer, so somebody who's just picking this up is I think we could clarify this a little bit. I mean, we could make it a little bit easier for people to read and understand so that the questions I have are answered to the general public taking a look at it. And I think the state's attorney's office would be helpful for that. So I would move to send this to the state's attorney for review and comment.
Okay. Do I have a second? All right.
Point of clarification, this is to postpone consideration of this until next meeting?
Yeah, if they could look at it and get back to us next meeting, we happy to vote on it then.
Okay. Then, so is there any timeline that we're going to be violating or anything on it?
No, we're, excuse me. No, we are just trying to complete the EV readiness program and that's perfectly fine.
So
to wait another month.
All right. So roll call vote.
You could do this by voice vote if you wish.
All right. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Just want to make one comment, so we'll be working on clarifying this. I do believe that the language of referring to it as providing a parking space is relevant in that parking spaces parking space may be in the garage, it may be in a carport. If someone were to propose to build a tiny house in Kane County and not want a garage at all, then it would be an exterior space. So I think referring to it as a space is probably appropriate, although it's hard to imagine, you know, someone not wanting to build a garage in our climate, but it happens. So I just want to throw that comment in there.
All right, moving on. Water Resources,
Nothing this month.
Community Reinvestments. Anybody online? All right, motion to put reports on file.
So moved.
Second,
Second, Burn.
all in favor by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any new business? Seeing none, Mr. Kenyon. April.
Yeah.
All in favor by saying aye. Opposed, same sign.